Good morning and welcome to this recorded webinar on Erasmus Plus Key Action 1 Adult Education in preparation for the application deadline of the 5th of February 2019 at 11 UK time. This webinar is aimed at applicants looking to apply for funding under the Key Action 1 known as Adult Education Staff Mobility. The webinar will primarily focus on how to fill out the application form, as well as some hints and tips to help you with the application process. We'll first talk you through what you need to do beforehand. Then we will go through the application form together, filling out certain parts, showing you how to use the distance calculator and how to validate the form. Then we will round up with some key points. Finally, we'll mention the next steps and how to contact us for support in the run-up to the deadline. So, Key Action 1 Adult Education. Key Action 1 Learning Mobility of Individuals is all about providing opportunities for individuals to improve their skills, enhance their employability, and gain cultural awareness through transnational mobility. The projects funded under Key Action 1 Adult Education enable organizations to offer structured work experience, job shadowing, training and teaching opportunities to professionals involved in or teaching non-vocational adult education. Please note that for staff teaching primary school children, for example, you would not be eligible to apply under Key Action 1 Adult Education, and your application should be placed under Key Action 1 Schools. If you're unsure whether your target group fits within the adult education spectrum, please contact the UK National Agency for further support. The aim of a Key Action 1 Adult Education project is to provide adult education staff with an opportunity for professional development, which will also increase their organization adult education provision. This funding also offers an opportunity for staff of adult education organizations to gain competencies in addressing the needs of adult learners with disadvantaged backgrounds. Given the current context concerning young migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, the Commission welcomes projects that train adult education organizations in such areas as training refugee adult learners, intercultural classrooms, teaching adult learners in their second language, classrooms tolerance and diversity. Key Action 1 Mobility for Adult Education Staff is managed by the UK National Agency team at eCourse UK. The team promotes the call for proposals, selects a successful project, and monitors them throughout their life cycle. Organizations active in non-vocational adult education can apply for funding to support any of the following mobility activities within a project. Teaching training assignments, where staff deliver teaching or training in a partner organization abroad, structured courses or training events abroad. Staff participate in structured courses or training events to support the professional development of adult education staff, and job shadowing. Staff undertake a job shadowing experience in an adult education organization abroad. Be aware that courses where course content is related to EU funding or bid writing are not eligible. Courses must improve the provision of learning in adult education. Mobility activities can last from 2 days to 2 months, excluding travel time, and the days of mobility must be consecutive. Funding can be used to support staff engaged in adult education activities, including support staff, managers, and guidance staff, as well as teachers and trainers. The training must respond to clearly identified staff development or training needs, or must contribute to your organization's strategic approach on adult education provision. The learning outcomes of the training must also be appropriately recognized and shared widely with others in your organization as part of the project's dissemination activities. Staff must be based in the UK and must undertake their mobility in an eligible organization based in another program country. Funding is not available for UK organisations to receive staff from other organisations. To receive staff from another programme country, the organisation sending the participants must apply to the national agency in their own country. It is important to note that Erasmus Plus funding cannot be accessed by individuals, so an organisation must apply on behalf of participants it plans to include in the project. There are various roles that participating organisations play in the implementation of an adult education staff mobility project. I will outline these and the responsibilities that each one should undertake. Firstly, the applicant organisation. This organisation is in charge of applying for the mobility project and if successful, signing and managing the grant agreement and reporting to the UK National Agency. The applicant can be a single organisation or the coordinator of a national mobility consortium of partner organisations from the same country, aimed at sending adult education staff on mobilities abroad. The National Mobility Consortium Coordinator can also but not necessarily act as a sending organisation. Sending organisation is in charge of selecting staff and professionals active in the field of adult education and sending them abroad. The sending organisation is either the applicant organisation or a partner in a national mobility consortium. All sending organisations within an adult education project submitted to the UK National Agency must be legal entities within the UK. Receiving organisation. These organisations are in charge of receiving UK adult education staff from the sending organisation or consortium and offering them a programme of activities or benefiting from a training activity provided by them. The specific role of the receiving organisation depends on the type of activity and the relationship with the sending organisation. The receiving organisation may be a course provider in case of participation in a structured course or training event. Please note again that courses where the course content is related to EU funding or bid writing are not eligible. Or partner. That means another relevant organisation active in the adult education field for job shadowing or teaching assignments. In this case, the sending organisation, together with the participants, should agree the objectives and activities for the period abroad and specify the rights and obligations for each party before the start of the activity. Receiving organisations must be legal entities within their programme country. For adult education mobility projects, you are not obliged to identify a receiving organisation at the application stage. However, you are strongly recommended to identify your partners and include them within your application. By doing this, you will strengthen the quality of your application. Identifying your partners within the application provides an opportunity for you to demonstrate how your partner's knowledge and expertise will meet the objectives and potentially add value to the activities of your project. If you do not input the receiving organisation in your application form, you should indicate within the application that the country and city or town where mobilities will take place. If your application is successful, the NA will request your receiving partner's details at a later date. UK consortium partners, on the other hand, must be identified in the application. It is important to link your Key Action 1 project to the overarching European priorities and show the added value of carrying out your project on a European level. When doing so, it is important to keep the general objective of the Erasmus Plus program in mind, as well as the important feature of the program. The general objectives of Erasmus Plus is to contribute to a number of policies, which are those you can see on this slide. The following are important features of the Erasmus Plus program. The Europe 2020 strategy, including the headline education target, the strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training, the sustainable development of partner countries in the field of higher education, the renewed framework for European cooperation in the youth field. The objective of developing the European dimension in sport is particular grassroots sport, in line with the EU Work Plan for Sport, and the promotion of European values in accordance with Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union, which include human dignity, freedom, democracy and equality. The important features of Erasmus Plus are detailed in Part A of the program guide and include recognition of skills and multilingualism. Please look through them carefully in your own time. Please also have a look at the specific objectives for the field of education and training from page 29 to page 32 of the program guide. So, now I'm going to be covering more specific information about preparing and submitting the application eForm. Once you have decided on your Key Action 1 adult education project idea, you have found partners and thought about how to address different European priorities, you will need to ensure that you have obtained a PIC for your organization before applying. A PIC is a 9-digit participant identification code which is unique to your organizations and will help you complete the application form. PICs are obtained once your organization has been registered on the European Commission's participant portal. You must make sure that all organization details on the European Commission's participant portal is consistent. If you haven't got a PIC, you need to follow a 2-stage registration process. However, before doing so, please double check that your organization definitely doesn't have a PIC. We recommend that you ask colleagues at your organization in case someone else has already created a PIC. Alternatively, you can check whether your organization is already registered through your EU login account by clicking on the Organization tab from the drop-down menu and using the search facility or online at www.ec.europa.eu/research/participants. If your organization already has a PIC, you should use that one and not create a new one, as having 2 or more PICs for the same organization will create problems. If you do need to create a PIC, these are the 2 steps that you need to follow. First, you will need to register on EU login. This platform of the European Commission was formerly known as ECAS. EU login is a point for user authentication to a wide range of Commission tools. The registration process is really simple and you can download a guide off our website which will talk you through how to do this. The guide can also be downloaded from Before You Apply section on the UK website. You would then need to obtain a PIC through the European Commission's participant portal. The participant portal is the single entry point for the electronic administration of Erasmus Plus projects, as well as projects funded under the EU programs. After starting the registration process, you will be prompted to provide information about your organization, as well as upload documents related to your organization. These documents are needed to prove the legal status of financial capacity of your organization, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information you've input on the portal. If you're creating a PIC, make sure you register on the correct participant portal. The link provided in the handout and on our website is for the Education, Audiovisual, Culture, Citizenship and Volunteering portal, which is the correct one for Erasmus Plus projects. If you were to simply search the internet, you might come across the Research Participant portal, which is not the correct portal for Erasmus Plus. Finally, if you want to apply as the coordinator of a national mobility consortium, you will also need to download the partner mandate templates from our website and have each of your UK consortium partners completed. Each partner mandate must be signed by both parties. Please make sure that all the information such as the name of the organization, address and legal representative on the partner mandate is identical to the information in the application form. If there are inconsistencies, partner mandates will not be accepted by the UK National Agency. After developing your project idea and completing the pick process, you can move on to the application form. To open the application, you need to click on the link to the Erasmus Plus Forms website, which takes you to the EU login screen. Log in using your EU login details. The application form for the 2019 Key Action 1 Adult Education Project is an electronic form which can be filled online and will need to be submitted online by the applicant organization by the deadline of the 5th of February 2019. Please keep in mind that this is 11 a.m. UK time, as the deadline for applications is 12 p.m. midday in Brussels time. The application form is available from the Apply for Adult Education Staff Mobility Funding page on the UK Erasmus Plus website under Key Action 1. My colleague Iris will now show and explain each section of the application form.
As you may already be aware, the web form for KIA 104 is no longer a PDF document and must be completed online in your web browser. The link to this can also be found on your website under the Apply for Adult Education funding page. We recommend, where possible, to use a PC to complete the form. You will still need Adobe Reader to download the Declaration of Honor. The web form is accessed through this link: webgate.ec.europe.eu/webforms. When you click on the link to access the online eForm, the EU login page will automatically show on your screen. After logging in, you will then see the home screen with 4 tabs, of which 2 are important. The Opportunities tab with the Apply button. Please click here and select Adult Education to open a new version of an online eForm. And the My Applications tab, where all the submitted or draft applications will be displayed. You have to be connected to the internet to enter information into the form. If you close the application, you can edit it again via My Applications tab on the home page and by clicking on the gray menu button, a box with 3 black bars in it, on the right-hand side of a given application version, choosing the Edit function. This way you can return to your application and complete it as many times as necessary. Please note that each draft application that you open by clicking the Apply button in the Open Calls tab will have a unique form ID number. To be able to return to an appropriate draft version, you will need to know the relevant form ID. Otherwise, the project title will be displayed here once it has been populated in the eForm. It is important to mention that you should only have one browser or tab open at the same time. After you have finished with the pre-application steps, you can move on to the application form itself. The application form will need to be submitted online by the applicant organization by the deadline. Please keep in mind that this is the 5th of February 2019 at 11 a.m. UK time, as the deadline for applications is 12 p.m. Brussels time. You must access the KIA 104 application through the Erasmus Plus Forms website. You can find the link to the website along with our guide for applicants on the Apply for Adult Education funding page on the Erasmus Plus website. To make sure you are working on the correct KIA 1 application form, you should check the areas you can see on this slide. In the top right-hand corner, the form should state 2019 as the call year and the specific key action such as the action type. Call 2019, Round 1, KIA 1, Learning Mobility of Individuals, KIA 104, Adult Education Staff Mobility. You will also see the correct deadline for the specific round. Now we will go into the actual application form and run through this with you. Here's the application form. As I will go through it, I will use the guide on the left to go between the relevant sections of the form. I will concentrate on hints and tips for each section based on previous application rounds rather than describing all the information needed. And I will then concentrate on the sections dealing with project activities and budget, showing how these link to each other. Please remember that you can find more detailed guidance on each section of the application form in our Guide for Applicants, which you can download from our website under the Apply for Adult Education funding page. The 2019 program guide is also a very useful resource that you can use to help you when applying. which can be found under Application Resources on our website. So I will give you a brief introduction to the key features of the web form. Each section of the application form is displayed in the menu on the left-hand side. Once all the mandatory fields in a given section have been completed correctly, the section will be marked with a green tick icon. If there is any information missing in a section, or if not all the application rules have been respected, a section will be marked with a red exclamation triangle icon. Most individual questions will be marked in the same way to make it easy to identify and fix any issues. Pre-filled sections of the form, such as the project end date here, are in gray and cannot be amended in the web form. Cells that don't have red next to them should be completed where possible and applicable, such as the project acronym. Mandatory sections of the form are in red. You must complete these sections to be able to submit the web form. As you can see in the first section of the form, we must provide the language used to fill out the form, which in this case should always be English when submitting the form to the UK National Agency. You can see that we must use the drop-down box to select this. The drop-down feature can be found throughout the form and in some cases appears when you click on the red cell or green cell. For example, with the start date. If I click on this cell, the drop-down appears and we can select the start date from the calendar that appears. Please note that the form automatically fills in the project start date at the 1st of June 2019. You can change this if you wish, but the start date for your 2019 project must be between the 1st of June 2019 and the 31st of December 2019. Please note that the National Agency suggests a start date later than the 1st of June, as it takes at least 4 months from application for your grant agreement and any pre-fining payments to be made. When deciding your start date, also consider when you will be able to recruit participants and the availability of your staff within your own and other participating organizations. You must then select the project duration. Ensure that the project duration selected is realistic for the project you are applying for. This is the total duration for your whole project, not just for the proposed mobilities, and will need to encompass all project-related activities from promotion through to evaluation and dissemination. Once the duration is input, you can see that the end date of the project automatically populates. In this same section, you must select UK01 British Council in partnership with ECORIS UK British Council at the top bottom of the drop-down menu. Now I will move into the participating organization section by clicking on the title on the left here. Here are some hints and tips. If you are applying as a consortium, select yes from the drop-down box. This will bring up an extra box here, consortium, where you enter your consortium members. If you are also involved in other consortia, please select yes from this box and explain further about this. Remember that all members of the consortium must be from the same program country and need to be identified at the time of applying for a grant. A consortium must comprise of at least 3 adult education organizations, so that will be you and at least 2 other UK organizations. Please also make sure that all consortium members have an eligible legal form at the application stage. Please note that once you have selected yes to the applying on behalf of a consortium, there are extra questions specific to being in a consortium and running the project that will appear throughout the form that you might not see here today. Remember, when you put in any PIC numbers, the information will automatically populate from the information in the participant portal. Here, I've already entered the PIC for test applicant organization. This will automatically load the legal name and the country. In order to check the applicant organization information, you can click on the organization and you are taken to this screen. Check the details, and if you notice any which are incorrect for you or your partners, they will need to be corrected in the participant portal. Enter details needed for the profile part of this section. You can see here that you need to add a contact person and a legal representative as associated persons. To do this, you should click on the button with 3 horizontal lines and select person's details. If you wish to add more contacts to the project from the applicant organization, you can select Add Associated Person. This is recommended so that your organization can remain in contact with the UK National Agency in cases where the preferred contact person is absent or unavailable. A tip: a better quality application will be specific and detailed in all questions answered in the form. Try to use SMART goals when completing the application forms. So that means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals. For the question below, explain how your organization's previous experience of delivering projects or activities has built the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in this application. And name the key persons who will be delivering the project and their skills. Be aware that if you have selected that you are part of a consortium, an extra question will appear here. To go back to the participating organization screen, you can click on the link at the top of the page. To add hosting partner organizations, enter the organization's pick. If your hosting organization does not have a pick, you can click the 3 dots and manually enter their details. Make sure that all details are correctly filled in for your hosting partners, including type of organization. I will enter the picks of 2 hosting organizations here. To add more partners, click the Add Hosting Partner button. For your application to be eligible, you will need to enter at least 1 hosting partner. UK consortium partners are added in the same way, and the option to add their details will be visible only if yes is selected to the question, are you applying on behalf of a mobility consortium above? Now let's click on the next section, the European Development Plan. Before we go into detail on this page, you will see that at the bottom of any boxes that require you to explain something, there's a count that shows how many characters are written in the box, and then the character limit. For example, here it is 4 out of 5,000. The purpose of the European Development Plan is to ensure that the planned mobility activities are relevant to both the needs of the individual participants and of your organization as a whole. It is also to ensure that the activities will have a positive impact on the quality of teaching and learning provided by the applicant organization or consortium partners here in the UK. Finally, when completing this section, you should demonstrate that the proposed activities tie in with the organization's or consortium's wider European and international strategy. Please see the guide for applicants for more information on completing this section. Please note that you can select up to 3 of the most relevant topics from the drop-down menu. You can add topics by clicking on them and delete them by clicking on them again. This feature can be found in other parts of the web form as well. Here are a few more hints and tips. Make sure you show a clear link with the priorities and objectives of Key Action 1, which are on pages 26 to 32 of the 2019 program guide. You should also think about which of the general objectives for education and training are relevant. These are listed in Part B of the program guide. Explain the specific needs or issues your project will address, based on a genuine needs analysis you or others have carried out in relation to the participants and organizations you plan to involve. Describe the specific needs of your participants and organizations and show how your project will respond to these. It is very important that you demonstrate how the learners and their staff you will select to take part in activities will benefit directly from the project. Moving on, in the project management section, you should explain clearly how you will ensure that the project and the grant are managed effectively and transparently, in order to deliver the planned objectives and activities to a high standard and within the time frame and budget available, including how you and your hosting partners, and consortium if applicable, will work together to achieve this. Detail the communication methods you will use with your partners and how you will ensure that roles and responsibilities of each participating organization are clear. Also describe how you will address practical and logistical matters like travel, accommodation, insurance, safety of participants, visas if these are necessary, and social security, for example. If applicable, you should also describe how you will use any of our online platforms, like the Erasmus Plus project results platform, as part of your project. Moving on to the next section, activities. This section is a really important part of the application, as this feeds directly into the budget summary section. So the information inputted here needs to be accurate and realistic for your project. The activities are split up into activity type, as you can see in the list of activities box. And you should only enter activity for the types you want. If you are applying for Erasmus Pro and you wish to carry out an advanced planning visit, this is where it should be recorded. The activities description. This question refers to hosting partners and therefore receiving countries, and how this relationship will be or has been formed. Make sure it is clear what your hosting partner's expertise are and why you are working with them. A tip: a strong application will be as detailed as possible in this section. Once you have entered participants into the activities below, additional questions will be visible in this section, depending on whether your project includes learners or staff. Moving into the list of activities, the activities that are listed here are job shadowing. This activity provides an opportunity for adult education staff to spend a period abroad in any relevant organization active in the adult education field. Structured courses and training events, activities which support the professional development of adult education, and teaching training assignments abroad. This activity allows staff of adult education organizations to teach or provide training at a partner organization abroad. This table will update as activities are added. I will now demonstrate how this works. I'm going to click on Job Shadowing activity type. Here, you first need to fill in how many participants under this activity require a grant and how many do not. Participants here are referring to learners and not accompanying persons. And we are back. Here you need to fill in how many participants under this activity require a grant and how many do not. Participants here are referring to learners and staff, not accompanying persons. Funding for accompanying persons can be claimed further down this form. Next, we will move into individual support. In order to find out which group your countries come under, you can hover over the question marks next to the groups. It is important you select the correct group since they each have different daily grants. I am searching for France, which comes under Group 2. Enter the number of participants necessary. If participants under the same activity type are going to multiple receiving countries, all of them can be recorded on the same table. You then need to fill in the average amount of days per participant. Remember, for adult education mobilities, it needs to be between 2 and 62 days, including travel. Please note that you can request additional individual support for up to 1 travel day before and after the activity, 2 travel days maximum. Your estimated grant for individual support will appear on the bottom right of this table. Under this table, there is the option to request individual support for accompanying persons. When Yes is selected, a new table appears in which you can record the country group and the average days of duration for the accompanying persons. We can now move on to travel. In order to fill this section out, you will need to use the Commission's online distance calculator. A link to this is provided in the guide for applicants. The distance is from cities and towns, so choose the nearest one to your head office and to the head office of your host partners. The distance that comes up corresponds with a band, which you will need to use to input the number of persons next to. Remember that this includes your accompanying persons too. This will then automatically populate the corresponding travel unit cost in the budget section. This is a contribution towards the return journey cost. Please ensure that you put in the right band, as this will be checked as assessment and if incorrect could affect the quality of the application. So in this case, we will open the distance calculator and input the relevant cities. This shows us that the distance is 805.48 kilometers, which falls into the 500 to 1999 kilometer band. The distance calculator works by inputting the town or city that will be the point of departure and arrival for the mobility. Our test organization is based in Birmingham, or port of departure, and the receiving organization is in L'Église-aux-Bois, France, or arrival point. As you can see, as I started to type the name of the location, the distance calculator suggested the destinations. Once both cities have been selected, it provides the distance in kilometers, and it is this number which dictates at which distance band you need to select. If you do not wish to claim any cost for travel, you can leave this section with zeros. If you do input less persons than you had earlier on in the form, a yellow warning will appear to ensure that this is intentional. Therefore, please take care when filling out this section of the form. I will now switch back to the application form to input this information from the distance calculator. Next to the 500 to 1999 kilometer band, I'm going to input 23, 20 learners or staff, and 3 accompanying persons. Again, the estimated grand total will appear in the bottom right corner of the table. Underneath this table, there is the option to request exceptional costs for expensive travel. This may be requested if you are traveling from or to somewhere which is remotely located, and justification can be provided to show that the standard funding given per distance band would not cover at least 70% of the travel cost of participants. This cannot be used in combination with the normal travel grant for the same person, so you can request either the standard unit cost or the expensive travel cost. Please remember that for expensive travel costs of participants, the EU grant will cover up to 80% of the actual cost. Be careful and note that in the application form you should enter the grant amount requested, corresponding to the percentage allowed, so you need to enter maximum 80% of the total actual cost you have calculated. So for example here, if I wanted 100 euros, I would input 80 euros. More information on this can be found in the program guide and guide for applicants. Right at the bottom of this page, there is a budget summary. Please check that this is correct for the activity type before moving on. To go back to the list of activities, you can scroll back up to the top of the page and click List of Activities. Once back in this screen, a new question will appear under Activities description because a learner mobility activity has been added. This question should cover the activities that you are going to organize, with an estimate of the dates that different activities will take place. Finally, I want to add some participants to the teaching training assignments abroad. Again, input the amount of participants that are in this activity type, excluding accompanying persons. The receiving organization falls in Group 1. You must put in their duration between 2 and 62 days, and I have chosen 10 days as my average duration. We can now move into travel. If this was a different receiving city, we would check with the distance calculator. However, we already know that Helsinki, in this case, falls into the 500 to 1999 kilometer travel distance band. Check if you need to request any expensive travel costs and check the budget summary. Once back on the screen of the list of activities, organizational support is then calculated at the bottom of this screen. This budget heading is only for participants and not for accompanying people. Organizational support is used for the organization, management, and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. For more information on the organizational support rates and how it is worked out, please see the program guide. Some general advice on the activities section. Explain how the activities proposed in this application for learner and or staff fit with other programs or activities you deliver. This will help the assessors understand what needs and expertise your organization has and makes it easier to see the potential impact of the project of your organization. When entering average durations, make sure to look at the total number of days you are requesting to ensure that this is realistic for your organization to deliver within the project duration you have selected. Now, moving on to the participant sections. Here are some hints and tips. Be specific here about who your participants will be and how you will select them. For example, if you're applying for an adult education teaching training assignment abroad, include information on the training assignment that your learners will be undertaking, specifying the subjects and level of qualification, and how the placement will support this learning. If you are selecting staff for mobility, how will you select the most relevant staff members? We found this information unclear in applications unsuccessful in previous calls. Also explain what recruitment and selection processes you and any partners will undertake. For instance, state how many participants you will involve and how the processes will ensure the most suitable participants are selected, whilst ensuring a fair process. In the case of staff mobility, you need to carefully detail the training that staff will deliver or receive, whether your UK organization is sending or hosting staff. You should demonstrate how the training program ties in with a needs analysis and your organization strategy. We recommend that you annex any specific materials relating to the proposed training to the application form to strengthen your case. Make sure that the placements match participants' training and/or professional development needs as stated in this section. The participant organizations should work closely together to match the selected participants with a suitable vocational or adult education placement. If applicable, address how you will ensure participants are eligible under the rules of Erasmus+. Check the staff section to make sure that the total number of participants inputted under each activity type are correct. In the staff part, please enter the participants with special needs here. All boxes must have a number inputted, and this number can be 0. It is important you input this here, so that you can request funding under the special cost section. This will be explained further later on in the application. The next 2 boxes refer to preparation, monitoring, and support of participants during the project. The specific activities mentioned in this section will depend on the objectives and activities of your particular project and needs of your participants. However, they will include some standard elements such as language and or cultural preparation for participants, mentoring and support, especially for staff and learner mobilities, practical and logistical orientation, any technical specific training or preparation before particular activities, and agreeing learning needs and objectives with participants. Under the preparation question, you will need to describe the pedagogical, cultural, and linguistic preparation that learners and staff will receive to ensure that they will be ready to live and work in a different environment and in a different country. You will need to identify whether it is the same for all participants. Be sure to explain how and when this preparation will take place and who it will involve. Address how you plan to handle risks or difficulties. For example, what process will you use to handle conflict resolution within the partnership and to prevent selected participants dropping out of the mobilities? Under the monitoring and support question, you will need to explain what monitoring activities will take place to support your participants and who will carry these out, and evaluate the participants' progress. Examples could be participant logbooks and regular Skype catch-ups between a staff participant and their line manager back in the UK. For learning outcomes, detail what is expected to be a result of the project in terms of learning outcomes. Your learning outcomes must also be clearly linked to the aims of your project and relevant to the needs of your participants. This means they must be agreed with both the learner staff of the sending and receiving organizations. At the bottom of this page, there is a part concerning the validation of learning outcomes of participants. Participant training and the skills acquired during the placement should be recognized, and you should consider involving European partners in the validation process. You will need to detail within the application which European and/or national instruments or certificates will be used to validate the competences acquired by participants. You can select the certifications with the drop-down menu. We can now continue on to special costs. Firstly, this section allows you to request any special needs support, that is, any cost that your organization and any partners will incur in relation to the participants whose physical, mental, or health-related situation is such that their participation in the project would not be possible without extra financial support. For example, special needs funding could fund specialist equipment that one of your participants will need, specifically to participate in mobility activities. Special needs support is calculated on an actual cost basis and will be assessed case by case. Therefore, it is important that you make clear in the description and justification box what items you need and the cost breakdown. You should also detail the inclusion of special needs participants in the main narrative of the application. Please note, the number of participants with special needs should be identified in the participant section first to allow costs to be added here. Secondly, exceptional costs are to be budgeted as actual costs. You need to clearly state in the description and justification box why you need these items and the cost breakdown. Under Key A1 Mobility Project for Adult Education, you can request exceptional cost funding for 3 areas. Additional costs to support the participation of learners with fewer opportunities. This excludes costs for travel and individual support. Secondly, costs connected to providing a financial guarantee if the national agency asks for it. And even though this does not need to be entered in this section, it is useful to know that exceptional costs for expensive travel are also classed as an exceptional cost. As I explained previously, this means financial support can be claimed for if applicants can justify that the normal travel unit cost given per distant band does not cover at least 70% of the travel costs for participants. If awarded, this then replaces the normal travel grant. Please note that if you are required to request this funding, it should be entered under the corresponding activity type in the activity section. Please note that only a certain percentage of the exceptional cost you are budgeting for will be covered by the EU funding. For instance, the EU grant will cover only 75% of the actual cost of financial guarantees. More information on this is provided in the program guide and handbook. Next, you can move on to follow-up. Here are some hints and tips. Be as specific as possible about the impact of the project in addressing the needs and objectives you have identified earlier in the application. UKNA have created a model to help you think about impact called Impact Plus, and the link to this is provided in the guide for applicants. You need to describe the expected impacts on individual participants, the participating organizations, the target group they work with, and any other relevant stakeholders. Do not forget to specify the impact of the project at local, regional, national, European, and international level. Also give specific details of the evaluation methods and indicators of achievements, qualitative and quantitative, you plan to use in order to assess whether or to what extent your project has achieved its objectives and results. You should attach numerical targets to quantitative indicators wherever possible, and explain who will be looking after this task. Don't forget your evaluation activity should consider the learning outcomes and how the project has contributed to addressing the overall aims of Key Action 1. You need to show you have carefully planned how you will make the results of your project known and mention what messages you want to share, what activities you undertake to do this, and when. You should be as clear as possible about who you will target with your dissemination activities. Plan for these activities to take throughout your project lifecycle and not just at the end. Have a look at Annex 2 of the program guide, which provides practical guidelines on the sharing of results of your project. In previous call years, this section of the application form has been identified as the weakest. The impact and dissemination section of the award criteria is worth 30 points out of the maximum of 100 which can be awarded. Please refer to the guide for applicants for more support on completing this section. The Erasmus Plus website also has lots of information and resources for dissemination and impact. Now moving on to the budget summary. Getting the budget right is an important part of the application. It is important that you have carefully considered and justified the budget requested. It is important to be aware that if the project is approved, the applicant organization will receive the grant and will be responsible for distributing it amongst the partners to ensure the effective delivery of the project. There is no maximum grant amount for an adult education project. However, you should ensure that the budget requested meets the needs of the activities planned and is realistic. All budget costings are for sending participants except under the activity teaching training assignments abroad only, where you can claim costs to host a teacher or training to provide structured training to staff. There are two funding mechanisms under Key Action 1 mobilities. One is unit costs. They are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution towards the cost. And on the other hand, actual cost means that you will receive funding for how much you actually plan to spend. Actual costs are used for the budget heading exceptional costs and special needs support and can be fully or partially reimbursed. The budget categories for a Key A1 adult education project are travel, individual support, organizational support, special needs support, and exceptional costs, and course fees under structured courses or training events. As you can see, the information has been pre-filled based on the information we already entered in the activities section. Under travel, individual support, and organizational support, the budget is calculated on a unit cost basis. Your request for the funding in travel should reflect the main activities you've detailed in the activities section. Next, you will need to check the request for individual support. This is a contribution to the subsistence costs of participants during their activity. Costs are calculated on a unit cost basis per participant, depending on the type of activity, the duration and the country where the activity will take place. If the estimated grant given doesn't look correct, this can be amended in the activity section. You need to check the request for organizational support, which is money to be used for the organization, management, and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. Once again, this information has been pre-filled from the activity details sections, and you will need to check here that the pre-filled information is correct, and if not, amend the activities section again. For course fees, you will need to check the request for course fees, as this can be pre-filled under the structured course training events activities in the activities tab. For special needs, if you would like to request funding under this budget heading, ensure that this has the correct estimated grant, as this is classed as an actual cost. And for exceptional costs, again, if you enter costs for this budget heading under the special costs section, please check that these costs are accurate. The section can be amended if not. Next, you can see the budget summary per activity type. This table breaks down the estimated grant for travel and individual support per activity type. Once again, please ensure that the estimated grant here is realistic and as accurate as you can make it. To reiterate a general piece of advice on the budget, make sure you have clearly described the main activities of your project and that the budget you request is consistent with your description. Because budget requests can only be accepted if it is clear what the money is being requested for. Remember, the Erasmus Plus grant is regarded as a contribution to your project cost and may not cover the total cost of your project. When you are happy with your budget and what you are requesting, you can move on to the project summary section. This section asks you to provide a summary of your project. This summary will be used by the Commission and the national agency in their publications and will also feed on to the Erasmus Plus project results dissemination platform. So it should be written in clear, plain English, avoiding any technical or sector-specific jargon to ensure that it can be understood by the general public. Ensure to include as a minimum information on the context of your project, its objectives, your participants, a description of the planned activities, and address the expected results and potential for long-term benefits. Please then check this section carefully and make sure this information is absolutely correct so you can make any changes to the application if necessary. Please also use this opportunity to check that all the information on participating organizations is correct, including applicants, hosting, and consortium partners. If any changes need to be made, these can be done in the participating organization section of the application form. Now, on to the annexes section. Compulsory annexes are the signed declaration of honor, and only if you are applying on behalf of the UK Mobility Consortium, you will also have to annex the mandates for your UK consortium partners, signed by both the consortium member and the applicant. The declaration of honor is the first box on this page. This is your organization statement that all information in the application is correct to the best of your knowledge. There is no conflict of interest, and also that you will take part in dissemination and exploitation activities if required. It expresses a commitment to the activities you have outlined in the application form. The legal representative of the applicant organization must print the declaration, read it carefully, complete the declaration section by hand, and sign it. Please note here that the national ID and organization stamp are not required in the UK for VET and AE applicants. The signed declaration then needs to be scanned and attached as an annex before the application form is submitted. Your project application will be deemed ineligible without the declaration, so please do not forget it. Please also make sure that the date is before or on the submission deadline. The amended template can be downloaded from this form too. The information in the amended template is taken directly from the information on the participating organization section. If any information is incorrect, this will need to be amended here or on the participant portal. Amendments need to be signed and dated in original by the partner organization and the applicant. Electronic or scanned signatures will not be accepted. You are also able to attach other relevant annexes such as training needs analysis, which would be good supporting information should you plan on hosting a training activity, and the sample work program. A hint and tip here is to keep it concise. We expect all the information that is key to the quality of the content of your product should be included with the main body of the application form. The final section is the checklist. Please make sure that you tick each box. These can be used as a prompt before you submit your application to ensure that your application is eligible. Read this section as careful as possible to ensure that all information and annexes that are applicable to your project are included in the application form. Also, please remember to read the data protection notice, as this is important. There are 4 headings underneath checklists, and the 2 most important are guidelines. This can be very useful when filling out this application form and offer further guidance if you need it. And the other one is sharing. With this new application form, the European Commission with this has decided to allow it to be shared with others if you wish. This is on a read basis only and can only be shared with another user with an EU login. This can be useful for projects to allow more than one person to contribute fully to the application form. So finally, here are some more general hints and tips to help you complete your application form. Read all our guidance and ensure that you are aware of the eligibility criteria for your type of project and the award criteria it will be assessed against. The deadline mentioned in the application form is Brussels time, so please note that the form needs to be submitted online by 11 AM UK time on the deadline day. We advise you to leave plenty of time in completing your application and submitting it online before the deadline in case of any unexpected technical difficulties. Ensure you are connected to the internet at all times while completing the application. Download the complete PDF version for your own record using the PDF button. Please ensure that all information is correct in the PDF too. When you are ready, press the Submit button. If the submission is successful, the submission summary should update within the submission ID. We advise you to save the final copy to evidence successful submission in case of any queries. If there are any technical issues preventing the form from being submitted and you are unable to submit the application, you should follow the alternative submission procedure outlined in the guide for applicants. This asks you to take a screenshot of the submission summary page, demonstrating that the web form could not be submitted, and emailing this along with your application annexes to the UK National Agency within the 2 hours of the official deadline, which would be 1 PM UK time. Lastly, please be advised that applicants cannot make any changes to their grant application after the submission deadline. I will now hand back to my colleague Christina, who will talk you through the rest of the presentation.
You must ensure you have validated all sections. You must ensure you have validated all sections of the application form before submitting. You also ensure that all annexes are attached before attempting submission. You need to check that the annexes are within the maximum 240 megabyte size for each file up to a maximum of 10 files, and in the file formats accepted by the eForm, which are listed in our guide for applicants. We recommend that, where possible, you scan different documents together into a single file. If you experience problems with the attaching annexes after having checked these aspects, you can email them to the erasmusplus@ecoris.com before the deadline of 11 a.m. 5th February 2019, clearly stating which application form they related to by providing the application hashcode. And also tell us your organization's details and project name. However, please only do this as an exception and ensure you have followed all the available guidance first. You will need to ensure that you are connected to the internet in order to submit your application. If you experience technical problems which you are unable to resolve, you need to follow the alternative submission procedure, but please be mindful of the errors which the NA cannot accept. For full details regarding the National Agency's alternative submission procedure for technical issues, please consult the National Agency's 2019 Key Action 1 Adult Education Guide for Applicants. Once we have received your application, we do some preliminary checks on your application. Your application will be deemed ineligible and will not go forward to assessment if it does not meet any of the eligibility criteria specified in the 2019 Program Guide for Key Action 1 Adult Education Mobility Projects. The relevant adult education eligibility information can be found on page 71 through page 73. I included some examples of applicable eligibility criteria on this slide, but please remember that this is not a fully comprehensive list. So, your application won't be eligible if your planned activities are not eligible under Key Action 1 Adult Education. For example, you submit an Key Action 1 Adult Education application to send your staff on a bid writing course or to host staff from another organization abroad, here in the UK, or plan to send staff who teach primary school children instead of adults. Or you submit two applications as a single UK applicant. You can submit one application as a single applicant and a different one as the lead of a national UK consortium. Your application won't go through the qualitative assessment if your organization, as the applicant, has no legal personality in the UK. If you apply, you will have to be able to evidence that your adult education organization is legally registered in the UK and has a separate legal personality, which means that there is a legal distinction between the owner and the business. For example, sole traders would not be eligible to apply for funding. Your application won't be eligible if you submit it after 11 a.m. UK time on the 5th of February 2019. We recommend that you submit your application days in advance of the deadline in case you experience any technical difficulties. Please make sure that you read the 2019 Program Guide and the National Agency Guidance for further details on the eligibility requirements before you submit your application. Once the UK National Agency is happy with your application and the application is eligible, it will be assessed by external experts against the award criteria published on page 72 of the 2019 Program Guide. From the slide, you can see that there are three award criteria. An application can score a maximum of 100 points. In order for your application to be considered for funding, an application must score a minimum of 60 points in total and must receive at least half of the maximum points for each award criteria. Each criterion has sub-points, which you need to really pay attention to, so please read more about this in the 2019 Program Guide or in our Guide for Applicants. We also recommend that you look at the 2019 Guide for Erasmus Plus Assessors to see in more detail how your application will be considered during its assessment. All the relevant links to these documents are in the handout of this webinar. Please note, as part of the assessment process, the UK National Agency will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the 2019 Program Guide at pages 74, 75, 76. If these rules are not respected, your requested budget may be reduced if your application is successful. During the qualitative assessment process, applications will also be assessed against other relevant areas. Applicants will need to comply with the exclusion criteria, which can be found in the 2019 Program Guide. This criteria includes situations such as being bankrupt or participating in criminal activities. An applicant will be excluded from participating within the call for proposals or will be rejected from the award procedure if it is found in one of the situations described within the criteria. The selection criteria includes operational capacity and financial capacity. In terms of operational capacity, applicants need to demonstrate they have the capacity to successfully deliver Erasmus Plus projects and administer them in accordance with the grant agreement and the 2019 Program Guide. The assessment of organizational capacity will consider elements like the roles of staff involved in delivering the planned project and the past history of the applicant in delivering EU-funded projects. An outcome of this analysis may be that the UK National Agency may limit the number of live projects an organization manages at any one time if it doesn't evidence sufficient organizational capacity to successfully deliver them. In terms of financial capacity, as you know, Erasmus Plus projects are co-funded, and Erasmus Plus grants may not cover all costs. Project must be delivered and reported using only a pre-financing payment or an advance. Therefore, applicants must have stable and sufficient sources of funding to complete the project. The UK National Agency doesn't complete a financial capacity check on public bodies and international organizations, or where the grant request doesn't exceed €60,000. When planning your project, remember that each project financed by the EU is entitled to receive only one grant from the EU budget to any one beneficiary. In cases where organizations are also receiving funding from other sources to deliver similar activities, it is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure they remain compliant with the relevant funding rules, including those in relation to double funding, which are detailed in Part C of the Program Guide. Finally, where the same or very similar applications are submitted by different applicants or consortia, they will be subjected to a specific assessment and may be all rejected. All applications should be unique to the organizations and participants involved in the project. Erasmus Plus National Agency will be validating your organization and your partner organizations. This is a separate process to the assessment of your application. Therefore, the fact that your organization has been validated does not automatically imply a successful outcome of your application. During the validation process, the UK National Agency will check whether all the information you have put into the participant portal is complete and correct. We will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as any of the necessary supporting documents. More information about this can be found in Part C of the Program Guide, starting on page 252. Your UK consortium partners will also need to be validated by the UK National Agency. Please therefore ensure that your partners have uploaded all the necessary documents for the participant portal to prevent delays to the process. Please note that organizations that are not valid cannot take part in Erasmus Plus funded projects. If you or your partners cannot provide the correct and fully completed documents during the validation process, there may be significant delays to the processing of your application, and the NA may even have to withdraw its offer of funding if your application is successful. There is no maximum budget for a Key Action 1 Adult Education Mobility project. However, the budget requested must be realistic and well justified within the application. We like to ensure that you are clear about the budget section, therefore this slide contains some repetitions. Some key points to remember about the budget. There are unit costs contributions and actual costs contributions. With unit costs, The funding is automatically calculated depending on the unit. This can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set of costs per distance traveled, for example. Budget headings using unit costs are travel, organizational support, individual support, and course fees, where you have selected the structured course or training events activity type. Funding for actual costs is obviously based on the real cost of the item or service, but only a certain percentage of the cost will be covered. Budget headings using actual costs are special needs support up to 100% and exceptional costs. For exceptional costs, a percentage of the actual total cost will be funded via the Erasmus Plus budget depending on the cost. The percentages and more information can be found on page 75 of the program guide. I'd like to clarify here that funding for course fees can only be requested if you have selected structured courses as an activity in the application. You can request a maximum of €700 per participant per project, not per mobility, for course fees, and you must justify your requested for course fees funding in your application. It is important to note that any request for financial support to cover special needs support and exceptional costs must be clearly justified in the application form. The assessor will not assume anything in relation to these costs and will recommend cutting them from the budget unless adequately justified. So, before we conclude, some key points for you to remember. Before and while you complete your application, refer to the Commission's documents, first of all the 2019 Program Guide and the National Agency Guide for Applicants and other guidance documents as available on our website. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement which will enhance your chances of submitting a good quality application. Remember that the Key Action 1 Adult Education funding is a competitive process and you should therefore look to improve your application on an annual basis. Ensure correct options are selected in the application so that important sections aren't deleted. As we've said, while looking through the application form, double-check that the budget you request is accurate and well justified. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember that there is a character limit of many of the sections. You can see the limit underneath each table. Get someone else to proofread your application and annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria and the 2019 Erasmus Plus guidance for assessor. Leave enough time for completing and submitting your application before the deadline of the 5th of February 2019 at 11 a.m. UK time. So to conclude, I'd like to remind you of the support the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the 5th February deadline for applications to be submitted under Key Action 1 Adult Education Mobility of Staff. The interactive live webinar will take place in January to answer questions on Key Action 1 Adult Education Staff Mobility. We'll offer key topics for discussion and participants will be able to ask relevant questions. If you miss this live webinar, you will be able to listen to it shortly as it will be on our website. A detailed guide for applicants and how to fill out this and submit the application form will be available on our website. There is a guide for each section type that we manage, so make sure you check the correct one. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the call and the Erasmus Plus program. On our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. We have also a helpline where our team is available to answer your question about your Key Action 1 application. The team is available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any queries you may have via the erasmusplus@ecoris.com inbox or our helpline. You can see the number on the slide and you can find it and you can find also the time frame our helpline is open. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you found this session useful today, and we wish you luck with your future applications.